getting to the core of our presentations. I will first introduce the main speakers of today. I will start by myself. I'm Valentin Grasse from the Brussels Capital Region, and I am the point of contact of the program for the Brussels Capital Region. I will now invite my colleague Alice from Wallonia to switch on her cam and to say hi, so you can identify her as well.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Alice Joseph, and as Valentin said too, I'm the point of contact for Wallonia, working for Wallonie-Bruxelles International.
And now I'll follow by Philippe.
Good morning, goedemorgen. Ik ben Philippe Rousseau, contactpunt voor Interreg Europe in Vlaanderen.
And last but not least, I have the pleasure to welcome Nicolas Singer from the Joint Secretariat, who will take you to most of the presentations today. So we're very happy to have you today on board.
Good morning, Valentin. The pleasure is shared. I'm very happy to be with you also this morning. So good morning. Yes, I'm Nicolas, and I'm working for the Joint Secretariat based in Lille, not so far from you, in fact. And I'm in charge of a unit called the Project and Platform, so everything related to the content of the program. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. I will just take you on the next slide to some of the house rules that will apply today. They're very classic and usual. We will just ask you to keep your micro and camera shut during the presentations. Don't hesitate if you have questions to raise your hand, to put your camera on, to ask the floor. The chat will be available during the whole of the meeting. We will try to pick up questions and to relay them in the Q&A sessions. That you will see that there will be several of them, so you will have many opportunities during the presentations to ask questions. If you don't raise them in person during the sessions, we will relay what is posted on the chat. So I will now take you to the agenda of today. After this brief introduction, Alice will present you the main results of the Interreg Europe program in Belgium for the past few years. This will put things in perspective. We will then have the pleasure of welcoming two partners of two different projects of the 2014 to 20 period who have been active and will give you some hands-on experience with their project. We have on the first part from Wallonia, Daniel Zimmerman. I see that he has his camera on, so you will have the chance to make a short presentation from the project Alice, and then from Flanders and the city of Mechelen, we will have Nicole Lalacona from the project CECI. After those two presentations, we will dive in the new program, the 21-27 program with Nicolas. He will present you the main characteristics of the new program, its key features. We will have some Q&A sessions here too. And then he will get you to very concrete illustrations and information on the new program and its call for proposal, on the terms of reference, and on all the assistance that the program can provide you in preparing for a call. So as I already told you, there will be many Q&A sessions. The chat will be available during the whole of the presentations. Don't hesitate to be interactive, to raise your hands. We are available to answer your questions during the presentations. We will close the meeting at around noon, maybe a bit later, depending on how the presentations go and on your questions as well. And without waiting, I will now hand on to Alice, who will take you to the main results of the program in Belgium for the past few years. Thank you.
Yes, hello everybody.
Excuse me, Daniel. First, I have to make a
Alice,
big activation.
sorry.
Yes, the other
We
Alice.
have two Alice.
Not travel.
I'm sorry.
So, as Valentin told you, I will show you some results of the last programmation. So just to give you an idea. So during the last programmation, the Interreg Europe program launched 4 calls, which means that it selected more than 200 projects, because we selected 358 projects for more than 300 million euro invested. But what does it mean for Belgium? It's the big question that everybody asks. For Belgium, we have, Philippe, you can, yes, perfect. For Belgium, we have 66 projects with Belgian partners. So they can be lead partner or project partners. And they are taking part in 4 thematics. So we had 14 projects in research and innovation, 24 projects in SME competitiveness, 6 in low carbon economy, and 22 in environment and resource efficiency. So it's for the main information. And now, as Valentin told you, we will listen to 2 presentations. And first, the presentation of Daniel for the project Alice. So it means the little confusion between us. And after the 2 presentations, we will have a question and answer time. But as Valentin told you, you can always ask your question in the chat if you have an idea during the presentation, and we will try to ask your question just after. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alice. And so Alice, on our side, stands for Animation League for Increased Cooperation in Europe. So I am representing Walimage, who is the lead partner of this project. And I will show you, maybe share my screen. That will be the easiest way to start the presentation. So if you can allow me to do it, I will do it. Okay, so that should be okay now. You should see it. Yeah. Okay, so this is a program. We have been part of the last call of the Interreg Europe, calls for tenders. So that was the program started in 2019. I'm just going here over the other way around. So as you know, there is the former calls, and I guess Nicolas will explain you the new rules, but the former calls were structured in, and still I guess now also, into 2 phases. The one which is the operational phase, which was the started in August 2019 and ended up 2 years after. So that was here, and the phase 2 started in 2000. In fact, I have just made a mistake here, and it was like that. That was the phase 2, which is the action plan phase. So as I said, the lead partner is Walimage. So it's a little bit particular here because Walimage, it's not the region. It's a regional fund dedicated, aiming to support the audiovisual sector. So it's a dedicated, specific fund to this action, to this sector. And has other partners. We have a mix of specialized funds like Pictanovo, which is the audiovisual fund at the region of Hauts-de-France. Also, that's maybe of interest for you, we had a private federation of non-profit association of the Federation of Catalan and Spanish producers. We have a region of Puglia, the Slovak Minister of Culture, and a business development agency in the southeast of Poland. So we have a kind of a mix of different structure, which I must say, I mean, maybe for you, when you are structuring your new project, it was quite of a challenge, because as you see here, we have a specialized fund like Wadimage and Pictanovo. So talking about animation, they are already in the business, of knowing who are the professionals in the regions and knowing exactly how to tackle the issues and to identify the bottlenecks or the barriers. For the other partners, like the region of Puglia, the Slovak Minister of Culture, and the Rzeszów Regional Development Agency, it was more, the program was aimed, and for them the exchange of good practices, which is in fact the basis of the Interreg Europe philosophy, was first of all more to learn from the other partners, from the more specialized, I would say, partners, and to implement new measures. As for Pictanovo, Wadimage was more to think about how to change the present rules. So maybe that's important to make this distinction first. And regarding the Producers Association, they were, of course, in touch with the regional policy makers, and that was important for them to have an input on the policy instruments. So I make the distinction here between two kinds of policy instruments: those who were tackling directly the RDF fund, Investment and Growth and Jobs program, and those who were dealing with their own policy instruments. Pictanovo, for example, has its own instrument, that's the regional fund, which is not relying on any RDF fund. And the Slovak Minister of Culture has, as it is said here, it was not at all related to the RDF funding, but their own cultural policy. Regarding what is also has been specific to this program, and this is linked to the particular specific position of Wadimage, it's a private company, so but with a public remit. So since the beginning, we have to deal with this issue that Wadimage has also its own policy instruments, which are its regulations. It's a funding body. They are funding co-productions, producers, also SMEs. So it's a very moving market because all the borders are blurring. The digital means are making things for the SMEs quite challenging. So Wadimage is supporting the growth of these SMEs, but through its own policy instrument, I would say. So we had to relate to the general Walloon program, but adapting and knowing that we'll have to adapt if there's any change in relation with the region Wadimage rules. And I will come to it later on. It's happening now, but that was a specificity of Wadimage. PROA, as I said, their specificity was that they are not directly in command of any of the regional programs, so they have to discuss, to deal, and they have involved one of the major stakeholders who has been involved during the program was the Generalitat of Catalonia. Region of Puglia, that was the easiest, I would say, because they are in command of their own regional program. And regarding the Polish, the same applies. They have to relate, but they are closely linked to the region. So that was easier in a way for them. I will focus on the exchange of good practices, of course, because this is the main, I would say, activities that will happen during the phase one, during 2 years, between 2019 and 2021. But what was maybe the way we have organized ourselves, and I think it's also important to say, maybe it's not the same way other projects are structuring their activities. We have decided from the start to base our exchange of good practices on specific thematic working groups. The financial, we call it the financial and legal one, the training, and so these are the main areas, I would say, of our activities: exchanges of good practices, training, new distribution means, cluster and smart specialization. We had also a horizontal mapping, And we ask, I would say, special permission to the Joint Secretariat to have a budget. I know that it's not the general rule because, as I said, program is based on exchange of good practices, but we felt that we need a support from a legal team because, and I will show you the result, we already had in mind that this exchange of good practices could lead to something very concrete as in terms of bringing to the market, to the producers, which are and the beneficiaries, in fact, the SMEs, a concrete instruments with a legal, being legally binding or having a legal background, which will help immediately to implement the action plans, which are the current phase. So I will come back to it later. Of course, because of the COVID situation, it was more difficult to have bilateral exchanges. They have some of them happened, but through Zoom, so that was less efficient. Study visits also was quite frustrating, not having them, being able to implement them fully. We had also a horizontal activity, which was quite helpful, a mapping methodology. That was precisely how the bilateral exchanges helped, because the lead in this mapping was PROA, the Catalan Producers Association, but they have been working closely through bilateral meetings with the Slovak partners first and the other ones after. So the exchange of good practices, these are the main areas which are in a way very general, because this is basically the RIDF remit, which is to increase the competitiveness of the sector, of our sector in fact here, and encourage the SMEs and professional working in the animation field. And we had then more specific areas which we tackled, which is the training one, the access to funding, which is crucial for the SMEs in our sector, and also to promote the incubators and innovation strategy. And as I said, the mapping, which was quite important, and now we have used them fully. I can share some of the concrete things because this has led, and I hope that now I can share this screen and it follows. So this is to give you the concrete examples of what happened. Sorry for the, okay. So for example, for the animation mapping, so it's not a study, it's really the methodology which was been based on the exchange of experience with basically with Vladimir, with the Slovak Minister of Culture, and then, as I said, through our working group approach. And this has led to a very concrete methodology in the different value chain of what is our sector's activity, the content creation, the production, the distribution, the consumption, and also the education areas and the funding and regulations. So this is really a tool, practical tool, that now in the action plans phase 2, our Slovak partners, our Puglia partners are using and are implementing in their region. So this is, they're using the output. That was one of the deliverable, but we are quite happy that it has been taken now on board by our partners. We also decided to, we have decided to publish, because that was the intention, to publish an online white paper, which is, I will show you in a moment, if I may, just sorry for the screen, yeah. This is the white paper. It comprises 137 pages, but we have two tools. As I said, we aim to be practical as a result of the exchange of experiences, which will have a direct influence on the policy instruments, because that's what the goal is about, is to change or to create new ways or new policy instruments. So one of the ways we found to make it happen is what we call the smart directory. the animation sector specificity is there are very different activities, a lot of skills involved. So we have created a kind of database framework based on the consultations with our stakeholders. Maybe this is very important to mention to you. All the inputs our partners got, they have got it from the stakeholders meetings. So for example, here, the skills which are involved, you know, very specific, specialized skills, all came from our stakeholders. We shared this database structure with them, and they provided the input. The good news is that for the moment we have entered discussion with the European Commission, the media program, to find ways to finance at least the launch of this database structure, to make it as a sustainable tool which will, you know, persist after the end of ALICE program. So this is one of the concrete example. The other one is the Marketing Rabbit funding program. There is as I said, there is a need to access for funding. So our legal team, those who were hired as a legal consultants, elaborated a framework contracts between two territories. So we have a framework agreement between two territories which would like to support the development of audiovisual animation production. So we have both here the contract between the two regions, two territories, and we have also, you know, down here in the bottom, I will not go through all the contracts. We have a framework contract between the regions and the beneficiaries. So this is also aimed, you know, now for the ALICE, I would say phase 2, to implement such a collaboration between the two regions. There are already discussions going on between Walimage and other regions, not only in the ALICE framework, this is the title of our white paper, but this is to show you that all these exchanges of experiences led to, I would say, practical, like a toolbox, and also that allowed the regions or the partners to implement or to change or to create new policy instruments in the specific area. I don't know if I'm not too long, but this is what I wanted to share you as a first glance of what we have been doing. But maybe I can end up my short presentation saying that here, if I take this training and education area, I just took some examples of what our partners has said. You know, for example, here the Polish partner in their action plan, they said, this is from the result of the discussions we had in the training and education areas during these 2 years. We will now implement and change and make, they are in discussion with the universities in Poland to adapt their educational program to the needs of animation. This is coming from our Polish partner, to implement some networking and educational activities to increase the potential of the animation industry. This has been all done with the Polish Animation Association, so they have been involved really very deeply the stakeholders, you know, those who are specialized in this field, the producers in animation, and setting up an animation and entrepreneurship training courses. This is for Puglia region, and Puglia region has already also set up a specialized fund. So this is in the area of access to funding. They have created the Puglia Film Fund, which is really an instrument specific to the ERDF. This money is coming from the ERDF program, and they have already implemented then that. Regarding the incubators, the same here for our Polish partners, and also the creation of Il Polo del Digitale, a cluster, a polo audiovisual cluster in Puglia. So this is only a few examples, which is what is going on for the moment. We are closing, you know, our conference, our program in Barcelona in July. That will be the dissemination final event. The very important news for us is that our activity is linked to specialized market. One of the biggest audiovisual film market is taking place in Annecy in June. And we have a partnership with the media program, with the European Commission, to organize in June, in 2 months, a conference which will tackle two of the main issues which I have mentioned here, the training aspect and the access to finance. And this is the first time we have a partnership with not the first time, we had already a partnership last year, but this time this is a very exclusive partnership we have with the media program. It will help us, I would say, to promote the ALICE program to other regions, not only staying between the 6 partners of ALICE, but promoting it on a broader scale to the European other territories. For them then to join us either through the Smart Directory initiative or the Wonderland financing initiative. That will be like a la carte program that we will offer to the stakeholders or other regions.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, very much for this interesting testimonial about your experience in the ALICE project and the different tools you developed in the project. Now I want to give the floor to Nicola Iacona of the city of Mechelen, who was active in the CC project. It's about the participation of citizens in sustainable and circular economy. So please, Nicole, take the floor.
Yes, hello. So I'm Nicole. I didn't do the project myself. I'm replacing my colleague Julie, who is a circular economy civil servant in our city. I'm the funding advisor. As she's on holiday, I'm explaining a bit about the project. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep in the project. I'm just going to tell you about what was valuable for us in this project. I'm also going to try to share my screen. I think it's this one, I guess, not sure. Is correct? Okay. So citizen involvement in circular economy implementation was our first Interreg Europe project. We have as a city been very active in several interregional projects, Interreg 2C, North Sea region, but this was our first Interreg Europe project, and in the beginning we were a bit hesitant. Why were we hesitant? If you look at our partnership, it was a very nice partnership, but it were mainly regional organizations. We had in Finland a university, the regional organization Provence Alpes, also a region. So we were the only city. And what we heard from other people was, Interreg Europe, is this actually something for local authorities? Because the main aim of the project was developing a policy plan and also impacting your ERDF. And our policy plan, we of course have a 6-year plan in our city, but it only affects our city. So we did jump because actually it was handed by us through OVAM, the public waste company, and they said like, this is something for you, Mechelen. Now, why was it? If you look at the project, it is on citizen involvement in circular economy implementation. And circular economy is a fairly new policy topic for a city. It was something that was not really explicitly in our policy plan yet. So it was quite new and we had a lot to learn. And on the other hand, citizen involvement, especially when you look at a new policy period in Europe, participation and bringing Europe closer to the citizen is a priority for Europe. And they also look at cities to actually be the ones to make this real, because cities are the ones who are closest to the citizens. So if you look at the topics of the project, raise awareness of circular economy and highlight the importance of citizens' engagement. We are close to our citizens. Inspire citizens to adopt sustainable consumption. It is citizens who have to take action. It is citizens who really have to decide to recycle, to decide to reuse materials they buy. Also, if you look at promote new sustainable services, people have to know about which services exist, what it actually is. And therefore, the project was actually quite welcome, and we were a welcome partner, because also if you look at cities, how they work, and this is similar to other organizations, we want to be a lean government, which means that there's a lot of focus on implementation in what we do. The council, the public, they want to see civil servants implementing and getting things done. And taking time for planning and making up new policies is something we don't have much time for, we don't get much time for. And in this project, we really explicitly got time to make up a plan and to get inspired and to learn about the topic. So the start of the project was sharing good practices, and it was very inspiring. You also see that when we looked at other good practices, it started up from their plans, but we always looked at very local initiatives. So actually it turned out that we weren't the odd one out. We were very similar doing in our city to what was in other cities done. And the thing is that we learned much about what circular economy was, but what was most meaningful to us was actually that we learned how to take a position as a city and to see what role we had to play, what we could do and what we couldn't do, where we were dependent on other stakeholders and where not. And this was the main thing that we learned from these good practices. And this is how we actually picked up the pieces to build our policy plan and to know what we as a city had to fund and not to fund, and where we as a city had to find funding for and do not find funding for. Of course, during the COVID period, the beginning was very much online. Events were local, and one person visited it, but we couldn't get together with all groups. But even then, it was very meaningful. Something else we got time for, and which is very valuable, is that we have to, in Interreg Europe, cooperate with citizens, but also with stakeholders. We have to organize events to see what the needs were, how they needed help. We also learned about what was already there, not only in other regions, but also in our own city. And talking with the stakeholders and the citizens, it was really valuable for us. Even in the beginning with COVID, it wasn't easy, but eventually it did happen. And we learned a lot about the needs, about how we could help them. So really taking the time to connect to the stakeholders and to the citizens is one of the assets of Interreg Europe, that you really get time to do this, and which really means that your policy plan, which is your action plan, is being drawn up at the end, is really supported by citizens and stakeholder groups. Yeah, so that was really valuable and one of the most important things we learned. And also the fact that we could bring along the stakeholders to other events in other regions and the other way around is something that you cannot do in other projects. There is much bringing along people from external people in your organizations to actually meet and exchange good practices is one of the assets of Interreg Europe. It's really valuable. I think actually other programs should learn from it, because it really gets people involved. It really gets them interested for policy plans and action plans. And it really makes tangible what we are doing in European projects. Even it's a few people from stakeholder organizations, I think that's what is one of the strong points of Interreg Europe. So then, yeah, COVID was really difficult. Social media helped us out. Meeting online helped us out. But when we actually could meet again, the dialogue started. We really had dialogue between people working for these initiatives, really talked about people that were planning, also talked to policymakers. And yeah, it's the most valuable part. And we're still catching up. A project is still going on, and we're still catching up to meet and to share good practices and to use the building bricks for our local policy plan. The result already, you see some milestones here. January 21 was the first draft and a list of the actions. In 22, there was a final draft action plan. And the good thing is that it really delivered something. And May 2022, so actually next month, there's going to be the Circular City Festival in which we launch the action plan. It has been drawn up with stakeholders and citizens. And we also present what the result is, how we're going to monitor it, and what the future actions will be. So the participation continues. And we see that with the Interreg Europe project, we brought some awareness to the public, but what we also see as civil servants is that our council values this participation much more. They really support it, and I think that in our organization, it opened up again more attention to participation in policy planning, which is also something that is taken along. But the fact that we had so much time for it, that we had to do it, that it was an obligation in the project, also opened up the eyes of our council for the added value of it. So this is also something that really motivates people in our organization for Interreg Europe, because you can bring this message along also to our own city council. And then in January, June, there's going to be the dissemination and lessons learned about policymakers, but also towards other cities. We are very proud of the project and we are very happy. And if you see what the result is, it's the policy plan, but it's also the awareness support. And alongside the trajectory of the project, already new actions has been started up. There has been another project with what we learned as a project. We learned as a city that we should facilitate new startups and organizations in circular economy. So we have another funded project, which is actually a support facility for startups in circular economy. That's what we learned for the project and are already doing. We are now developing several Interreg projects for the new policy period on circular building, on supporting startups, on shared mobility, which all have their roots in this very valuable learning trajectory. And what's also good is that the follow-up of the policy plan and the monitoring of the policy plan is also a part of the Interreg Europe project. So the sustainability is not something you only have to describe in your project, but is part of it. And that's also very good, because then we got actually time to monitor it and to follow up. So that actually was my short story. I didn't dive deep into the circular economy as such. If there are questions, I can try to answer, but please also know that my colleague, Julie, is the one who actually knows all about it and has the finesse of circular economy. And maybe also another result which makes us very happy is that when we cooperate with other cities and organizations, is that we are and a bit proud, mostly I'm very modest, but now I'm only a bit proud, that we are looked at as a city who is a bit of a pioneer in circular economy policy. And we only could have managed this because of the Interreg Europe project, actually.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicole, to tell us something more about your experience within the CC project. And also it's nice to hear that the story continues after what you've taken out of the CC project. So that's a nice thing to hear. Now I want to give the floor to Nico to present.
I already stopped sharing, or?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Okay.
If there are questions, we will gather them later on. Yeah, that's okay. Now I want to give the floor to Nicola to tell us something more about the Interreg Europe program itself. So what the Interreg Europe program for the period 2021-27 has to offer. And after that, you will focus on the call for proposals itself. So please, Nico.
Yes, thank you very much, Philippe. Big thank also to Nicole and Daniel, because I think they have already done my job in a way, in a very nice way, because it's a word of the practitioner, which is much more powerful to the word of the program sometimes. So it will make my presentation much easier, because I could refer to some input of Daniel and Nicole, I think. I'll try first to share my presentation. Can you see it? Is it okay for everybody? Yes, perfect. So what we were thinking is maybe we would start by very general key features of the program. And this first presentation will not only be what are these core characteristics, but also to try to explain you each time the important concept that we have in this program, not from a theoretical point of view, but also trying to give you examples each time. And again, what we just heard will be very useful to understand what exactly Interreg Europe is about. I don't know what you think, Alice, Philippe, Valentin. If people want to interrupt me, if you raise your hand, I think we could also be very interactive in case you cannot at all follow what I'm saying or there's something really strange. I would be very happy to stop and we can have interaction. For me, it's totally fine. Huh? Otherwise, anyway, we have time for QA. Just a small word of disclaimer before starting. It's a bit strange, this situation, because we are launching a call at a moment where our program is not yet approved by the Commission. The program is, of course, finalized. The program documents are finalized, but legally speaking, we do not have yet the approval of the Commission. Hopefully, it will come in the month of May. And then, of course, retrospectively, our member states will approve all documents. So you have to take this into consideration as a very, very light risk that maybe some of the features will change. But this is very unlikely, to be honest. And I think you can work already with all the tools that we have and the document that we have. So if we start with a few very basics of the program, we have increased the total budget of the program, which is very surprising, knowing that we are losing one country with the Brexit, and also knowing that most of the program budget for Interreg are reducing in other. So we were very lucky, and it also shows the importance that the Commission, I think, and the member state attach to Interreg Europe and to pan-European cooperation. We have now what we call 6 topics. I will come back on this, but we are really open up the scope for cooperation compared to the 4 priorities that Alice have mentioned at the beginning. And of course, what is interesting, it makes Interreg Europe a bit unique. We are the only Interreg where all EU regions are eligible, and we are also working with 2 associated countries, Norway and Switzerland. So it offers very interesting opportunities for pan-European cooperation. If you go to the objective, you heard this morning a lot about improving policies, improving regional development policies. This, in fact, this wording derives from the regulation, from the European regulation. So we have no choice. This is what the mission of Interreg Europe. And on this slide, you see the official formulation that you can find in the European Territorial Cooperation to improve regional development policy instrument, and how it is mainly through capacity building, a change of experience, and sometimes innovative approach. Everything, in fact, that is related to the identification and transfer of good practices. That's the reason why Daniel and Nicole were also insisting on this element of good practices. This is very theoretical, this wording. In fact, it's very easy to understand. This is a program that allows policymakers involved in regional development policies. It allows them, it supports them in finding new solutions, finding inspiration, so they can solve concrete challenge they face on their territory, whether it's related to CO2, reducing CO2 emissions, or making the private sectors more sustainable, etc., etc. Sometimes the local authorities or the policymakers, they don't think they are as efficient as they should be, and they would like to find inspiration elsewhere. Interreg Europe is the program that helps these policymakers to find new inspiration and to improve what they are doing in their territory. This rationale is very, very important, because I don't know if some of you were involved in other Interreg programs. I think Nicole mentioned cross-border and transnational programs. But one of the recurring confusion we have with Interreg Europe is that sometimes people think it's a simple geographical extension of cross-border and transnational. And in fact, the difference between Interreg Europe and the other Interreg is much more fundamental due to this rationale. The first is that the core element behind this rationale and this objective is that we are mainly dedicated to policymakers and more or less to public authorities, if we want to simplify it. And the second element is that we are there for learning. It's a learning program. It's a capacity building program. We are primarily focusing on exchange of experiences. So it's not a research program. It's not an investment program. It really allows you to have access to the experience of others. And this makes us very different from the other, of course, programs. Now I come to a bit the concept, and I think I can be a bit quicker than what I thought, because we had very good example this morning of all these concepts. One of the most important concept at the heart of the program, what do we mean by regional development policies? And we have the concept of policy instrument in our program. And if you apply to the call, you will be asked to define what is the main policy instrument in each region that you would like to improve. And this policy instrument is a mean of public intervention. So again, the notion of public authorities is very important, and it can be a lot of things. It can be a strategy, a program, a plan of the county, a law that is, in most cases, of course, developed by public authorities. And what I say at the beginning, it's applied on the ground to solve a specific situation, to improve a territorial situation. So at the end of the day, the region is getting better at the end. And one of the specific mission of Interreg Europe, you may have noticed it on the slide before, is that the Commission in particular would like us to help also for a better implementation of the cohesion policy, the EU cohesion policy, which is mainly financed through operational program in the different member states and in the different regions. And this operational program are called Investment for Jobs and Growth. So you hear Daniel mentioning a lot, several times, the ERDF operational program. That's typically in our world what we called a policy instruments. And there was even a pressure, a kind of requirement in the 2014-2020 period for the project to really focus on this kind of program. Now we are a bit more open, you will see a bit later. Deriving from this notion of policy instrument, we have another very important notion. It's a policy responsible authority. And it's very easy to understand what we mean by this. It's the organization that is responsible for the policy instruments that you try to improve. So it's in charge of the elaboration and delivery of this public intervention. And of course, in most cases, it's a public institution. So we heard the city of Mechelen. The city of Mechelen is the policy responsible organization for its own strategy, for its own circular economy plan, for instance. And in the case of Daniel was mentioning Walimage. Walimage is an agency, very important for the policy indeed, but still, because they were addressing the operational program, the real official policy responsible authority was or is the Walloon region itself, who is in charge of delivering these structural fund programs. I will come back also why this is important. I wanted to provide you a few examples, but I'm not even sure it's needed today because you have a lot of examples from Nicole and from Daniel this morning. You saw them on the screen. Here I was selecting one strategy developed by a Norwegian county council. I'm not sure even how to pronounce it. But you see that it's a strategy developed by the county council itself. It has 4 different areas, and it's related to the digitization of different aspects of the territory, the economy, the civil services, the citizens, etc. And this is typically the kind of policy instrument that we can have in our program, in our projects. And you also see that the county council is a policy responsible authority. I think what Nicole said was very important also to say, at the beginning, we thought that Interreg Europe was mainly perhaps for regions, and you had to be at the regional level, which is anyway a very different notion according to the country. You have to understand that for us, policy instrument is a very open notion. It can indeed be at the city level, it can be at the county level, it can be at the, of course, the regional level, or even at the national level in smaller country, as long as it contributes to regional development and regional development policies. The last notion I wanted to mention in this introduction is the notion of policy improvement, because one of the most common questions we receive is, okay, your objective is to improve regional development policies, but it's so abstract, it's so broad. What do you mean exactly by improving regional development policies? In fact, with the 20 years of experience that we have now, we have identify three main areas of policy improvements, three ways to improve policies, let's say. And the first one is the most common, is simply to finance a new projects in your region because of what you've learned from other regions. You discover that there's a very interesting innovation voucher with a university that you never tried. Then for the first time, you will implement this new innovation voucher in your region. This is what we call a new project. So the implementation, the delivery of the policy is richer because you have different kind of projects that you would not have thought without the Interreg Europe project. But there's a lot of other ways to improve policies. You may not immediately think about it. One of the very common change we have also in our project is a change in the governance, meaning in the way you implement the policies. For instance, if you have a program which launch calls for proposal that select project, you may improve the communication on the call because you learn it from others. You may change the selection criteria for selecting the projects, etc., etc. And all this also contributes to improve the public intervention on the ground. And the last possibility, which is the most ambitious, and sometimes for our project, it's much rarer to see this kind of improvement, is really when you change the policy instrument itself. We were hearing this morning about circular economy. Maybe it's a complete new subject in your region. You have an economic development strategy, but that do not mention this at all. Thanks to the project, after 2 or 3 years of exchange of experience, you will manage in your region to introduce a new chapter or a new measure to support circular economy in your region. So it means that you really change the strategy as such. Whatever is a case, you see that we are very open on this notion of policy improvement, and you should not necessarily be scared by what it means, because again, there's many, many ways to do it. The policy instruments I was mentioning earlier, the example of the Norway, had a very interesting improvement, and it was mainly related in supporting new projects. Thanks to the exchange of experience, what they learned from Germany, from Latvia, they designed 2 new projects that were finally financed in the region. So it's exactly the kind of results that derive from Interreg Europe projects. And you may also remember the results in Wallonia that Alice explained. It's a bit related to this kind of monitoring that we do with our project. If I come to the program scope now, we are opening up to a lot of subjects, much more than the one that we have now, because we have only one cross-cutting priority on capacity building, and this capacity building can apply to all subjects relevant to the cohesion policy. And you see the first 5 topics here are what we call the policy objective of the cohesion policy. And we even have a fixed one, but I will come back to it later on. What I could just say that the strategy of the program that was decided by the partner states, it's to still allocate a majority of funding to a certain number of subjects. And to make it quick, it's mainly related to innovation, economic development, digitization, a smarter Europe, the policy objective 1, and to the greener Europe, everything related to environmental consideration, climate change, of course, the Green Deal. These are really the core of the program. And there's partly also issue on social. That's the reason why you see the arrow that is in a bit in a different color, because certain topics of social are also part of what we call the concentration principle. How do we do this? How the program achieves this ambitious objective of improving policies? We are financing 2 kinds of actions. The projects that everybody knows, and I think you had very good examples this morning. We will continue to do so, and I will come back to this. But Interreg Europe is also a bit unique because we are, I think, one of the only Interreg program to offer these permanent services through the policy learning platform. We try to further exploit all the richness we receive from the 258 projects at the moment. You cannot imagine the number of good practices that are identified, the transfer of experience that can benefit potentially other regions. So the policy learning platform is there to digest a bit all this content and make it available to everybody. And we do that through 3 main services. that we call knowledge, people, and expert support. The knowledge is mainly if you're interested to have a look at our good practice database, or there's a lot of policy brief, for instance, of circular economy or social economy. You can have a look on our website. This may be quite interesting for you, and you will find there example of good practices or interesting policies. We are also organizing a lot of events, and there's a community of peers which is very broad now, not always so active. 25,000 sounds very, very high, but much less people are very, very active, but still it's quite a broad community. And the last services is most demanding, but perhaps also the most successful. We are also providing peer reviews. If you're interested, you have a specific issue in your region, you don't have the time to go in a project that lasts 4 years, you can simply apply to a peer review, and the policy learning expert will bring you a few peers from Europe that may help you to find new solutions to your challenge. So this is also a very interesting service from the program. This is what I can say very generally about the overall program features. I'm wondering if you have already questioned at this stage or not. I'm not sure I've seen any hand raised. Alice, I don't think it's the case as far as I see. And I don't follow the chat. I'm not sure I follow the chat, but I'm not sure there's also in the chat. No.
Maybe I will have one question, Nico. I don't see
Yes.
anything in the chat yet. The policy learning platform, is it available for anyone at any time? You don't have to participate in a project? Did I understand right?
Valentin, this is a very important question because that was exactly the idea. We know that some smaller authority or smaller regions, they do not necessarily have the means and the knowledge to access projects. It's a bit demanding. You need to know there's rules, there's control later on. So that's exactly the idea of the platform, is that at any time, whenever you want, whenever you're ready, you can simply access the service of the platform. The only small reserve I would say that for the most demanding services, the peer review and the matchmaking session, you need to be really a policymaker. You need to be in charge of public interventions to get access to this service. But all the other ones, they are open to anyone interested in Europe.
Thank you very much, Nico. I propose, if there's no one who asks for the floor, to go to the second part of your presentation. Yes. We will get more and more concrete and start talking about the first call, and this will probably raise more questions, so we will leave time for that.
Of course. Of course, and in fact, now I'm going to dive in the first kind of action that we have, the projects. And this may be the most interesting for you if you're coming today to this National Infoday. It's perhaps because you're interested in the first call, of course. So I will try quite briefly to explain you what are the main features, again, of the, not of the program this time, but of the project, but everything is interrelated, you will see. And I will also repeat certain of the things I have mentioned. What I propose is first to go through the project objectives and activities to give you a bit insight in what are the program expectations there. Then to go on what we call the partnership requirements, which are quite important in Interreg Europe. And the last word on also on the project finances. So if we start with the project objective, you will see that what I was saying for the program is simply translated in the project. So it's a bit prescriptive, this program, I have to say. You're not, there's not a lot of creativity possible, because what the program tries to do has to be reflected at the level of each project. So if you are interested in an Interreg Europe project, this will be to improve the public intervention of the different regions that are involved in these projects. This is the way, in fact, the way that each project contributes to the overall program objective. There is, I mentioned on this slide, local, regional, national, so you see that we are very open. Nicole's intervention was also interesting because you had mainly regions that were involved and suddenly a city. Even this kind of configuration is possible if it makes sense, and sometimes it's even a source of richness to mix the level of governance and the different levels, even if in most of the projects you have quite kind of similar territories that work together. But this is in a way open. And the thing I wanted to mention there is there's already a first requirement. were also deriving from Daniel's presentation. If you are interested in a project, you will have to ensure that at least one of the policy instruments is an investment for jobs and growth goal program. So this program that are financed by the cohesion policy in every regions in Europe, in every member states, you have this kind of programs. And because ourselves, we are part of this cohesion policy, the Commission would like us to keep a link with that and to try to also improve the implementation of this program. By the way, for those of you who knew the 2014-2020 period, this is much more flexible now, this rule, because in the past, it used to be half of the policy instruments that were addressed in the project, they had to be structural funds. So they had to be this kind of program. So it was a bit challenging for the projects. Now it's only one. What can we say about the activities? As I told you earlier, this is a capacity building program. So everything is about learning. And primarily, this is learning by exchanging experiences. And you will see all the traditional activities that are used to exchange experience: workshops, seminars, study trips, peer reviews, staff exchange, all these kind of elements that also contribute to identify, analyze, disseminate, and in the best case, transfer good practices. Even if the notion of transfer of good practices is also very open, it's extremely rare that you can simply transfer a practice from one region to another, but at least the inspiration or certain aspect of the practices, maybe you can integrate them in your region. So that's the first element. Daniel was also mentioning studies, analysis, that it was a bit exceptional. He's right. We are not a research program, but when because your subject is quite specialized, you needed some legal background, as Daniel said. In some circumstances, you can also ask for a study or for a survey, as long as it contributes to the exchange of experience and benefit to the partnership. But there is another way also to learn is learn by doing. We are a bit more open on this. And there's a possibility, because it's not always enough sometimes to simply travel, visit the place, meet the people. Okay, it's very nice. Sometimes you realize, especially when the concept is new, that you need to try it in your region. You need to test it a bit before making sure you can generalize it with your policy, with your public intervention. So there's a possibility for pilot actions also from the start of the project or at midterm. And all these activities, the aim of them is that they increase the capacity of the people and organizations involved in the project, also from the stakeholders. I'll come back to that a bit later. We heard from Nicole also the importance of the stakeholders. And this increased capacity, at the end of the day, we hope will end up in policy improvement. The notion of good practice, you have understood it from the presentation of the project, is very, very important. Sometimes we are asked, what do you mean exactly by a good practice in Interreg Europe context? This is something that is related to the public intervention, indeed, because sometimes we have projects that report us a pure private company initiative, which sounds very interesting, huh? But you have difficulty to understand why it can inspire public authority. So this notion of public intervention is still very important in the good practice. What is important is mention good. So it has been successful on the ground. You need to provide evidence of success. And of course, it's potentially of inspiration. It's a source of inspiration for others. I don't mention bad practices there, but you will see that I think they are mentioned somewhere in the program manual. You can also learn from failure, from things that didn't work. Sometimes it's very important. It's more difficult to discuss because some regions, usually you're not very proud of things that didn't work, but they can also be a very interesting source of learning. At least at the program level, we try to collect the good practices and to make them available to a lot of people. There's an example from Brussels region here, so you can see a bit more concretely what is a good practice. And it's interesting because it relates to the subject of Nicole, the circular economy. It's an initiative launched by Brussels Capital on the reuse, in particular, of building materials. And this has been a very interesting practices in a project called Two Lives, which has been very appreciated also by the other partners of this project. And then the question that we have quite often is, what do you mean by pilot action? And the pilot action, you have to understand that it's a bit contradicting to what I said earlier, but it's really something that is implementation related. So you stop traveling, meeting people, visiting places. You try really something concrete in your region. And with the overall objective that if everything goes well, if it's successful, then it will end up in improving the policy instrument or the public intervention, because it will be embedded, it will be generalized, it will be integrated in the policy instrument. So it is important that to understand that it's not at all obligatory. We do not necessarily promote pilot actions, but we know that sometimes they can be useful. And they are possible under certain conditions. It has to be clearly related to policy improvements. Sometimes we receive requests that are very, very far from public intervention, to be honest. We don't even understand the link with the policy improvement it may lead to. And you have to demonstrate that it's a joint initiative, so there's an interregional character in it. And it's testing. We are not there to implement it finally. It has to be a small scale initiative that has the potential to be generalized afterwards. You may find example of pilot actions on our website. We have also articles on this, so this may help you to see. I wanted to show you an example here, which comes from a project called Citizen, and it was developed by the city of Sofia. And it's an interesting example because it was a mix of different inspiration coming from different partner regions, and they developed vertical garden models in Bulgaria, in the Sofia municipality. And depending on it's still under evaluation, this pilot, they wanted to integrate this initiative in their own Sofia Green program for the years to come in case of success. So you can see how concrete this can be sometimes, these pilot actions. If we come back now that I've mentioned what kind of activities are possible, if I mention how they are organized, these activities, they are organized in 2 phases. I think Daniel has mentioned them already. And all projects now last 4 years. We have standardized the approach compared to the past. So you don't have a bit the choice of choosing the duration of the phases. It will be 3 years for what we call now the core phase and 1 year for the follow-up phase. And it's quite easy to understand, especially now that you've heard the examples at the beginning. The 3 years are at the heart of what we are doing. Interreg Europe is there to support capacity building, exchange of experience. And at the end of these 3 years, in the best situation, in the ideal situation, the regions that are involved in the project, they are successful. They have achieved some policy improvement in their regions. That would be the best scenario. But this is really the objective, that you have 3 years to do something in your region with the learning from others. And then, as Nicole highlighted, we are one of the only programs, I think, to keep on working with the projects to see how it goes after that the policy are improved, or if it's not improved, you do a certain action plan and how much you implement this action plan, because you can also learn from that, and you have a very interesting outcome sometimes in monitoring the policy improvement on the ground. So that's very specific to Interreg Europe, I think, these two phases. For those of you who know our program, there's a small change compared to the current period, is the notion of action plans. I think Daniel especially insisted on every region has to do an action plan. We realized this was not the best approach, to be honest. It was even counterproductive, because some regions were waiting for the end of the core phase, saying, okay, we will see for policy improvement, we'll do an action plan and we'll see. And this is not the idea. We realized that a lot of regions, they already achieved policy improvement very quickly after 2 years or before the 3 years. So now the idea is that for all the regions that have achieved their objective at the end of the core phase, they don't need to produce anything. They don't need to produce any action plans. We will just continue monitoring the results on the ground of the policy improvement in the regions. So it's only the regions that did not demonstrate policy improvement in the 3 first years that will need to produce this action plan. So you understand it's a bit a different approach than in the previous program. And the last thing I would mention is there's more flexibility. So for the beneficiary, it's easier. We were very strict in the 2014-2020 period with the 2 phases. Now it's really up to each project to define the activities of the second phase. This was not the case previously. We were predefining the activities. And you can also continue the exchange of experience, although the second phase is primarily dedicated to monitoring the impact of the results, if I can say so. I see that Davide has a question in the chat. Would you like, Valentin, that I answer it now?
Yeah, no problem. I think it's maybe Davide would like to intervene. It would be nice for you to have a minute of.
I don't mind, you know, but
Davide would you like to? No, I don't see him coming.
I think.
Yeah. Well, if the question is not clear, I can clarify.
I think it's clear, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I think it's clear, Davide, your question, so I can answer because it's an important question.
And thank you for your presentation, by the way.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But your question is important because if I may come back to the slide related to pilot action, you see that there are 2 possibilities. Either you propose them from the start, and then you need to be very good in the preparation phase to do that because it's not so easy, but it's possible. Or you do them at midterm. For the pilot action that are proposed at the start and approved at the start, you have to finalize them at the latest by the end of the core phase. That's the idea, because at the end of the day, this is to improve within 3 years the policy instruments, and it may even finish a bit earlier, of course. For the one that are proposed at midterm, they will be a bit shorter because you would need to finalize them in the first semester of the last year. If you follow me, you have the last year, which is called the follow-up phase. At midterm of this one, in a way, after 6 months, you would need to finalize them. So we can, in the last semester of the project, to see what are the results of this pilot action. I hope it answers your question. So if I come back, you're welcome. Maybe if it's okay for everybody, I go to partnership requirements now. And again, I think I will be a bit quicker. The most important way on the project content. Partnership requirements are of course fundamental also, but I will be a bit quicker. You have to know from a pure legal point of view who is eligible. That's something we cannot avoid. And of course, due to the rationale, the objective of this program, public authorities are eligible, of course, public law body, or bodies governed by public law. It derives from a directive on procurement rules, but meaning even if you're in France, for instance, you are an association of private law, regional development agencies, sometimes they are like that, but because you are financed only by the public, you would qualify as a public law bodies. And we have a third possibility, which is private non-profit bodies. It can be the case, for instance, maybe of chambers of commerce in Belgium. It may be the case of some cluster organizations that qualify as private non-profit bodies. If you have any doubts on your status and whether you would be eligible or not for funding in this program, it's only the national point of contact that can help you to answer these questions, because the GS cannot know the rules of each country. And to answer Audrey, in the vast majority of cases, I think in all the cases I know, universities always qualify as either public authority, even sometimes they are public status, or public law bodies. So I can reassure you that usually they are eligible for funding. Then let's see what the role they have in the project. NGOs is already a bit more tricky to answer, Bram, because the issue with NGOs is that it really depends whether they can be regarded as private non-profit bodies. And again, if you're based, for instance, in Belgium or Brussels capital, you may ask Valentin to his advice, or the colleagues of Valentin, to check whether or not you could qualify for eligibility to Interreg Europe. So that's who eligible. If you look now at the geographical coverage, we have a special recommendation in this program, because we are the only Interreg program, again, that is pan-European. And in the past, you cannot imagine the issue we had with the geographical coverage. 15 years ago, we were receiving mainly transnational proposals that were only involving a Spanish partner with an Italian partner and then a partner from Greece. This is not the idea of Interreg Europe. The Interreg Europe is to go beyond what you usually do in other Interreg, and it's also to mix more advanced with less advanced regions. So we strongly encourage broad coverage, pan-European coverage, and you will see later what it means for the first call also. I would like to end up the partnership requirement with perhaps the most important information for you today, because this is fundamental, this element. If you want to be serious with our objective, which is very ambitious, to improve regional development policies, you need to make sure that the policy responsible authority, you remember I defined it a bit earlier, you need to make sure that the policy responsible authority is involved in the project. This is perhaps the most important lesson learned of the past 20 years. We had a lot of projects where they were only chambers of commerce or universities, or less in the previous programming period, but 15 years ago. And the results at the end of the day of this project were very disappointing in terms of policy improvement. So all recommendations coming from the evaluation of our program say you need to make sure the policy responsible authorities are involved. So there's a new requirement, and maybe that's the most challenging for you, perhaps, in this new programming period, is that for at least half of the policy instruments that are addressed in your project, the policy responsible authority must be a partner. There's no choice anymore. For half of them, they must come as a partner. If this is not the case, because sometimes it's very difficult to, for instance, if you are on an operational program, the managing authority may not be willing to come. Wallonia region, for Wallimage, it may be very difficult for them to be involved in this project. Then they still need to come as what we called associated policy authority. This is a new status that we have created. And I'll tell you in a few seconds what it is, associated policy authority. In addition to that, you need in each region to create a stakeholder group. This is a bit secondary, but I don't want to forget the stakeholder group. And in fact, it represents the ecosystem of the relevant organizations, stakeholders that you need to have if you're in innovation. For instance, it's not only the public authority, but you work with the Chamber of Commerce, the innovation agencies, the SMEs, sometimes the incubators. All this needs to be involved more or less in the exchange of experience, so you increase the chance of policy improvement at the end. But what is an associated policy authority? We call it internally a golden stakeholder, because it's an organization that is still officially included in the application form, but it's not a partner, so it does not have any budget. Only its travel and accommodation costs could be supported, could be reimbursed by the program if they are paid by the EU, the partner represented in the project. If we take the example of Alice, for instance, the project at the beginning, if Wallimage is involved, but the Wallonia region cannot be involved for different reasons, it has to come as associated policy authority, but Wallimage could pay the travel and accommodation of the representative of Wallonia region when they come to certain project activities. That's a possibility to involve them. They have also to provide a declaration, a kind of commitment at the application stage. And finally, it's also completely new. Their involvement in the project will be regularly monitored. Every semester, you will submit a progress report to see where you are. There will be a specific question on how is it going with the associated policy authority? Is it properly involved in the project? So this is a new concept we have also in this program. But again, this is very, very important, this question of having the policymakers on board. If I may finish with the project finances now, I will try to be quite quick. You see here on this slide, the main budget lines. I think it's the case for most of the projects in Interreg. What I would like to highlight, a few things. The first one is that the staff cost is the most important budget line compared to other programs, because we are there to have the representative of the partners on board, and we are there to increase capacity of these people and their organization. So compared to other programs, in general, the staff budget line is the most important in budget. And the second thing I wanted to highlight is that we have an infrastructure and works line for the first time, but it's only for pilot actions. And it's really, really, I would say, exceptional. We had a few pilot action where a small works was needed for making the pilots. We have an example in London, for instance. And for this, it may be possible to propose infrastructure and works, but again, it will be at a very limited scale. The second main message for you, and this is rather good news, we have tried to simplify as much as possible the rules. So you have a lump sum for preparation costs. This will be paid in case you are approved immediately to the consortium, and then you divide as you want this lump sum of 17,500 euros. We have also simplified the staff cost. It's simply a fixed rate of the contract. If you're working 100% on the project, you simply report all your costs on the project. We have a flat rate for office and administration, but this was already the case. It's calculated in relation to the staff costs, 15%. And what is completely new, and we really hope it will make your life easier, we have a new possibility, and it's a stronger recommendation, very strong recommendation, to have an automatic calculation also of the travel and accommodation costs, 15% of the staff cost. You will no longer have to keep your metro tickets to calculate your hotel cost. It was a lot of issue in the past with audit findings. If you apply this rate, you won't have any issue, and we think you will gain a lot of time to concentrate on rather on the exchange of experience than monitoring the project costs. This is what I can say for the cost. And what I can say also for the co-financing rate, it's a maximum allowed by the regulation for public authorities from the EU, of course. And it's 70% only for private non-profit. It's a bit less for this because they are less part of our core target group, of course. Then you have 50% support for Norwegian organization. So the rate depends on your location also, not only on your legal status. And for Swiss funding, you would need, people need to approach the canton because it's managed at the canton level. Sorry that I'm very long and I'm the main speaker now, but this is what I wanted to present you before going to the details of the first call for proposal. So I wonder if there's maybe any questions on this second presentation. I don't see anything in the chat at the moment.
It is probably because you are very clear, Nico, or that everyone is very well prepared and is waiting for the rest of your presentation. So I propose we'll move on to the next part.
Perfect, I'll do that. And please do not hesitate to publish your question in the chat if you have any, even in the middle. I don't have any problem. Otherwise, you will have to bear me for in a row for a long time. But what we were planning now with Alice, Philippe, and Valentin is to go, and it will be a bit quicker. You will see on the first call feature, so to describe you the terms of reference. And after that, we will end up by explaining how we can help you, the program assistance tools. If you go to the call main features, I would like to mention the timing, but I think Valentin has already done it at the beginning, the amount, what it is about, and who can come. And you will see that there will be several references to what I've already presented. So we have opened the call last week on the 5th of April, and the good news is that the application form is now available. It was not on the 5th, but now it's available on the portal. You just need to register on this portal if you want to see the content of the application form and start completing the information. You can do so now. And it will be closed on the 31st of May. So it's quite a quick call. I know it's not always easy. And one of the recurring questions is, when is the second call? We envisage to have the second call for sure in 2023, hopefully in the first semester also of 2023. It very much depends on how many applications we're going to receive this time. The decision will hopefully be by the end of 2022, meaning that the first call projects will start at the earliest at the beginning of 2023, just for you to have an estimation. The budget, the member state decided to allocate 40% of the budget to this first call, which is very, very, very comfortable. We never committed in the past such an amount to the first call. So you should not worry, but the member state wanted to make sure in the exceptional case where we would have very, very good quality applications and a lot of applications, we would still reserve money for other calls. But again, the highest commitment we did was 100, I think, in the past. So it should be really comfortable, and it's reassuring that there will be next calls in the future anyway. Maybe a bit more important for you, the topics of the call. All the topics I've mentioned earlier today are open. So it's a very open game, I would say, and a lot of regional development issues are possible in this first call. I've already mentioned the 80% principle. I will say a very quick word on each of these topics. And what I'm going to do that, it's simply to list the official text of the regulation. The ERDF regulation define precisely what is smarter Europe, what is greener Europe, what is more connected, etc., etc. So I will show you a bit more precisely what it means, this topic. So if you dive into smarter Europe, in a way, this smarter Europe is a merge of what we used to call thematic objective 1, 2, and 3, and our current priority 1 and 2, which is everything related to research and innovation, everything related to SME competitiveness. And we add there, which was not really possible in the current program, everything related to digitization of the economy, of companies, etc. So you see that it's very broad already. Smart specialization strategy are, of course, a very important topic there. And you have also even the notion of skills there. If you look into greener Europe, this is again very broad, and it regroups more or less our current priority 3 and 4, low carbon economy and environment and resource efficiency. Issues like risk management are also possible, which was not the case in the current program. So climate change elements are totally possible. And this is all that contributes more or less to the Green Deal agenda that we have at EU level. But you see how broad is, of course, this greener Europe. And then again, in the 80%, in the concentration principle, we have 3 objects, we call them specific objective of more social Europe. In relation, of course, to the COVID crisis we went through, the member state identified the issue of labor market and the consequence of the crisis on the labor market. Of course, healthcare was another element. And culture and tourism was always an important topic also in interregional cooperation. So this is also part of the 80%. Then you have the remaining topics. They are all listed apart from the governance topic, but you have under social, connected, and citizens, several elements. I may not go very far. I would just highlight that for the topic called Europe Closer to Citizen, this is a very, very specific topic. It's for the project that are interested in working on integrated territorial strategies. So it's not because I have a project on cultural tourism or sustainable tourism. It's not necessarily there that you should go. You should go there only if you're interested in working on integrated territorial strategy. And the definition, I don't have the time to develop them here. The definition of these strategies is also provided in the European regulation. And what is interesting maybe for you to know is we have even a fixed topic, which is not even thematic related. It's really about the governance, about the way you manage policy. And I provided a few examples there. But thanks to this cross-cutting priority that we have on capacity building, you may have projects that exchange their experience on what are the best consultative process to elaborate a policy or to implement a policy? How do you make sure the relevant stakeholders are involved? And this applies to any kind of policies, innovation, environment, etc. So this kind of governance-related topics are also possible in the next, in the new program. One point of attention, we heard this morning Daniel and Nicole, for the projects that are already running in the current program, 2014-2020, we very, very regularly receive question, can I come back in the new program? we are very careful with this, and we tell them to be very clear with what is the innovative character of their new proposal. In other words, if you take, for instance, Daniel's project, Daniel comes back with the same subject, audiovisual sector support policies, the same regions, it's very, very unlikely that the innovative character will be demonstrated. So you really need to check if the partners are the same, if the topics are the same, what kind of activities you propose, because you would need really to change a bit. And it's fair enough. I mean, you can understand that Interreg or EU programs in general are not there to simply finance the same projects over and over again. That's a bit the message behind it. And last but not least, the geographical coverage that I mentioned earlier, there is a specific rule for the first call, which is again quite demanding. The program divided Europe in 4 areas, north, east, south, and west. You see them in different colors. And the requirement for this first call is that in your partnership, you need to ensure that at least there is a partner from each of this area, so that you ensure a very broad coverage in your partnership. You see again the character, the unique feature of Interreg Europe through this requirement. Sorry, just a very small slide of conclusion on this first call. If we have to give you the tips, the most important tips is to be very, very careful with the preparation. Preparation is key for preparing a good application. And we have a very important document that you need to see is the manual, the program manual, summarize everything I have said this morning. So you will also even have further details on this. Assistance tools, we have a certain number of things. Do not hesitate to use them, but this I'll come back to it just after. And maybe sometimes it's even useful to have a look at the selection process, because we are very strict with eligibility, for instance, compared to other programs. It's a yes or no process. And it's so pity to stop at the eligibility stage, because you may have forgotten a declaration, or there's a field that is not completed, things like that. You need to be very careful with this to make sure you go through the eligibility. This is what I can say again on the call, and I'm wondering if there's any question at this stage. I see that Audrey is launching a call for interest already on the governance subject.
Yes, this is a very good question indeed, because here we are in the Belgian framework. If Audrey is looking for partners in other member states, what would you advise her to do?
Well, I think it's a good transition to the last presentation, because I will mention that. But there are different ways to do it. In terms of what the program can offer, we have now the new website launch, and we have the possibility for Audrey to publish a project ID on this website. And in this publication, she will be able to select what kind of partners she's looking for. So the main advice would be to publish this project ID, and usually it works. She will have some interest from the community, maybe to join the project. The other way around is also possible. Audrey can simply consult the project IDs that are already there. And if there's a similar ID from her ID, she may also contact the person that are in the community. That's for Interreg Europe. We have also sometimes pan-European events, like 1 week ago when we organized Europe Let's Cooperate. Unfortunately, now it's over. Then, because Valentin, you represent Brussels, there are so many EU networks in Brussels, gathering a lot of regions. These kind of platforms, these kind of networks, they are also very good to find partners, depending on the subject. So I know that a lot of regions, they use also these networks to find the relevant partners.
Thank you, Nico. And of course, I can add to that that the point of contacts in Belgium, that is me, that is Philippe, and that is Alice for each respective region, can also relay to other point of contacts in other member states the ideas you have, and we have a lot of exchange between ourselves. So that is another way to find partners in other member states. So thank you. Is there any other question before Nico takes us to the last part of his presentation? I don't see any, so Nico, the floor is yours again.
Okay, so this will be my last part now. And this is a bit more operational. It's again a good transition, Valentin, to your question, the assistance that can be provided to applicants. I will first mention the tools for project developments, mention also a few other assistance tools, and maybe give you back the floor, because at the end of the day, you are very important in this game, the point of contact assistance, of course, also. So the tools for project development, we gather them in the process of preparing. So I am relevant. Can I find inspiration? Can I share my project ID? How can I find partners? We just mentioned it. And maybe can I ask also the program feedback on my project ID to see whether it match the program requirements. I think the most important element today when you are preparing, before even preparing a project is Interreg Europe for me or not? You have heard a lot today about policymakers, exchange of experiences. This is very crucial. And we had the experience, a bit less now, but in the past, we created a lot of disappointment because we receive a lot of application from cross-border experience organization or transnational, and they didn't understand that Interreg Europe was very, very different. So you need to make sure you are involved in regional development policies and you are interested in finding new inspiration, finding new practices from elsewhere to improve what you're doing in your region. This is at the heart of the relevance. But if this is confirmed, we even develop, you have to have quite a fair idea of what you want to do. We even have developed a self-assessment tool on the website with a few questions that helps you to see whether you are in the right direction and whether the core elements or the core ingredients are there for Interreg Europe. So you may even test this tool to see if it helps you or not. Then you can see that all our projects are published on the website. And if you go on each of these individual projects, this morning we had Alice and Ceci, but you can even see what kind of policy instruments they try to improve, etc. So this may really help you to understand better what Interreg Europe is doing. And this may even give you some ideas for new projects. This, of course, will also avoid you reinventing the wheel, because maybe a project exactly in the same field has been already financed. And it's not that you should stop, but at least you should be careful that you do not repeat exactly the same thing. And as I said earlier, it will help you perhaps to identify a partner. You have the possibility to share your project ID there with what you would like to do and what partners you are looking for, but I've already explained that to Valentin. And you can simply search if you don't necessarily want to publish anything, but join an existing partnership where you don't want to be the lead partner, for instance. You can also search on the website for the right people and the right organization. The last thing that has just been launched 2 days ago, there's an article if you want to see how to do it. You can also ask for a feedback from us, from the program, from the Joint Secretariat. But I want to be careful that this makes sense if you start to have quite a clear idea on what you want to do, because the more specific you will be in this project ID form, in particular the policy instruments that you want to improve, the partner that you have already, the more useful it will be for you, because otherwise we cannot really give a very detailed feedback. So maybe when your project ID becomes more mature, you can apply to this, and we will do our best to give you a feedback quite quickly, either in writing, or we could even have do it on the phone or online, of course. And because we receive usually a lot of demands, it's only one feedback per ID per call, because we need to manage equal treatment also to everybody. So now I come to other assistance tools, and I would never insist enough on the importance of the program manual, because again, everything is more or less there. You should be able to find all information on the program recommendation, program rules, more information on the learning process, the exchange of experience, what do we mean, what kind of activities, etc. And this will help you to complete the application form. And we have, of course, also the terms of reference of the first call, but they mainly repeat certain things of the program manual also. We are regularly organizing question and answer sessions, so you may also join some of them. The first one was organized yesterday. There were 110 participants, and it was quite lively. So this may be also useful for you if you're preparing an application. And some more will come at the end of the month in May also, so you should not hesitate to register. And there is the lead applicant webinar week, we call it, at the end of this month. We will have 4 different sessions organized for you in order to prepare your application. So it's mainly for those who are really ready to apply in the first call. We will get a bit deeper in certain aspects of the partnership, of the methodology, of the finance, and on the communication to help you to finalize your application. There's a frequently asked question, I think, section on the website, and you can also contact us at any times, even with specific questions. We'll do again our best to get back to you, of course. This is it from my side. Sorry that I monopolize a bit the floor for quite long, but I think now what would be interesting is open the floor and see if there's any questions from everybody. Thank you very much.
I see that there is some interest between potential projects that would like to exchange information. So this is not directly open to you, Nicolas. If there is any question, don't hesitate. Now is the time. I can't thank you enough, Nicolas, for all the information that was provided. It was very dense. I just have to reassure everyone, you will get the slides that were presented, as well as the link to the recording in the next few days. So you will have some more time to digest what was told today. And there will also be the few sessions that the Secretariat is organizing that would help you further, including the Q&A session. So there are a lot of open lines for questions that might arise in the few days or weeks if you are preparing for this call. If I don't see any question, I will hand on to Philippe for the end of our presentation today.
Yeah, thank you, Valentin. The last part of today will be about the assistance we can offer as a national contact point within the Interreg Europe program. As you already heard from Nicolas, there's a lot of different tools the program provides itself, but besides that, Alice, Valentin, and I are also there for you. So if you have questions concerning your project, if you have trouble finding partners and such things, you can always contact us. We can also deliver you general information about the program and the calls itself, and also dedicated information for partners from Walloon, Brussels, and Flemish region, especially on certain aspects where there's a little difference. For example, on the control system or first level control system we have. So in Brussels and in the Walloon region, it's a centralized system. And in Flanders, we work with a decentralized system. But in this part of the project phase is something you don't have to worry yet. So it's something you have to worry a little bit later on in your project. And if you need some information, you can always contact us. So you can find our contact details in the first slide, which we will deliver you after the meeting of today, together with the recording, as Valentin already said. Also on the website of Interreg Europe, you can find the country-specific page with all information about us and the the specific information for each of the 3 regions. So if you have questions about each of those things, you can also find our contact details there. So afterwards you can ask us. So yeah, I think now we have finished the meeting of today. We got a lot of information and a lot of homework to do probably for everybody who participated today. And we hope to see you back in the project one day or another. So thank you very much, Nico, also Nicole and Danielle, and my colleagues from the other regions for the cooperation in the organization of this event. So thank you very much. And goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.